Alright, good morning. It's the Monday Morning Show. Today on the show we have a very special guest. He's the owner of the Comedy Studio, comedian Rick Jenkins. Rick, how's it going?
Hey, very good. And you're setting up the club.
Yeah, great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much.
And I would like to ask you, how did you get started in comedy?
Well, I started way back long before you were born. 1979 in Buffalo, New York was the first time I set foot on stage.
So I'm assuming you moved then to Boston at some point?
Yeah, well, back then there weren't any real comedy clubs. So I did comedy in Buffalo until I graduated from Buffalo State and got on a train and came to Boston in 1986. And Boston was undergoing this comedy boom with Stephen Wright and Bobcat Goldthwait and all those guys. So I figured, that was the place to be. So, yeah, I got here in September of 86.
And did you start out doing like open mics or?
Yeah, well, back then there weren't really, like I said, there were very few comedy clubs. So it was a lot more like it is now, where you would have a bunch of friends would put on a show, and you would put them on your show, and then a bar would do a show, and you'd get on there, and a comic book store would open something. But once I moved to Boston, that was all 6, 7 full-time clubs, and you auditioned and tried to move up through the ranks.
Oh, okay. And which comedians did you look up to?
Well, when I started out, what really got me into it was Woody Allen, Robert Klein, Monty Python. I was just addicted to comedy albums.
Yeah.
And just saw and listened to everything I possibly could. And then once I moved to Boston, the people here were just so good. The new young comedians, the guys like me struggling, were Louis C.K., Mark Maron, David Cross. Those were the new young guys. And, it was pretty intimidating. I figured I'd move to Boston and become a star right away. But no, you had a lot to learn from a lot of different people.
So you did a lot of shows with those guys?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, they were, so you had Nick's and Dick Doherty's and the Comedy Connection and Stitches and Catch Rising Star were the big comedy clubs. So Tony V and Steve Sweeney and Don Gavin and all those guys they had all the paid work. So Louis C.K. and Mark Maron and David Cross and myself and a lot of people, we were doing the opening act and the little weekday stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we all started out together. I don't know whatever happened to them, but I've got my own little place here.
Yeah. How did you develop your style of comedy?
I think that's just one of those things that it's repetition. It's the more stage time you get, you start losing yourself in it a little bit and just start being yourself. It's a very difficult thing to really pinpoint. That's why stage time is so important. That's why when you ask anyone how to become a comedian, they're just going to say, get as much stage time as you possibly can, because that's where it all comes out. There's only so much of yourself you can get out in your notebook.
Yeah. Did you ever write for other comedians or TV shows?
Yeah, when I started out back in Buffalo, like I said, there wasn't much of a club scene. And so I started writing off jokes and sending them to Joan Rivers and Rodney Dangerfield. And, every once in a while they would buy one or two and send a check for $50. So I started doing that. And then once I moved to Boston, I got a job, got a spot writing comedy on the morning radio show on WZLX. And that's where I teamed up with John Rogers, who's also from Taunton. And he now runs the show The Librarians. And he did the show Leverage, and he's written the movies Transformers and Catwoman and all sorts of stuff. So I spent a good year or two writing stuff there. He also wrote on The Cosby Show, which was really cool because I got to sit in on a couple of the writing sessions.
So what made you decide to open the Comedy Studio?
Well, basically, once you get around to 1992, 93, that comedy boom I was part of started fading. So the guys like me and Louis and Marin and Garofalo, we weren't able to get those, $100 to middle shows anymore. They just weren't around. So those guys all moved on to bigger careers. And I just stayed in Boston and got a job at a bookstore, figuring, that was a dream I tried in my 20s, and got very lucky that the Hong Kong was a place myself and a couple other comedians used to hang out. So we started doing Sunday nights, kind of open mic jam session, just a place for, for comics to try out stuff and do something different. And then that expanded into Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we got lucky that Eugene Merman was just graduating college, so he started doing Fridays here, and that gave us a lot of cachet. And he was a rising star, and he brought a lot of people around. And it'll be 20 years in April, and it's really just been a matter of trying to build it one show at a time.
Wow.
So there was no okay, let's have a business plan and a marketing plan, and how much capital do we have? It really was just a little room that we built, an hour and a half show at a time.
Yes. So, did you ask the owners of the restaurant if you just asked them if you could do a show upstairs?
Kind of. What happened was another comedian had a crush on a waitress here.
Yeah.
So he kept bringing all the comedians over, and then the manager came up to us and said, "Hey, we're remodeling the third floor into a dance club. As long as you're out by 10 o'clock, maybe we can make a couple extra dollars doing an early comedy show." So it really was them coming to us and giving us the idea in the first place.
Now, what's the show schedule like?
Yeah, well, now we do 6 days a week. We have professional magicians do a magic show on Tuesday, and then we do stand-up comedy Wednesday through Sunday. We've always done a showcase format, so it will always be, say, 8 different comedians doing about 10 minutes each. So if you have, someone with a national TV credit, they're doing the same time in front of the same audience as someone who's brand new.
Well,
so it's really, for me, it's really about mixing everything up and having a creative environment where everybody's got a shot.
Okay, and I know you have a lot of people come from different places in the audience. Does that make it harder for the comedians?
Well, for some it does, yeah. What's nice about it is I like to think our club is a little bit of a bridge between working clubs and getting on TV, because just playing to, say, a Providence, Rhode Island audience where you have a lot of jokes about Providence, Rhode Island, isn't going to get you on television. You're going to have to be able to play to a much bigger, broader audience.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who can't play to those people in Providence, Rhode Island, isn't going to have the chops to get on TV either. So I like to think that we're sort of in between. That you can't be too offensive, but you have to have something that's unique and different, or it's not worth seeing.
Yep. Okay, you've seen a lot of comics come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what the successful comics have in common?
It's really just a question of work ethic, of how much time they spend with their notebook, how much time they hustle getting to a gig. Everybody. I'm told a lot like, "Oh, we have this great eye for talent," or "We develop talent." I like to just say, "Hey, I have the keys to the gym. Whoever shows up and lifts the most weights is going to be the strongest."
Yep.
That's what everyone who's made, Mike Kaplan and Eugene Merman and all those people. That's the one thing they all have in common. Some of them were terrific when they started. Some were terrible when they started, but all of them had that work ethic that meant in another 4 or 5 years they learned from their mistakes. They kept working at it and eventually had something really unique and different that people are interested in.
Yep. Has there been any celebrities that come to the shows?
Oh yeah. We've got it was one summer Sandra Bullock came to watch a show while she was filming a movie in the area. We had one terrific show with Mike Kaplan hosting, Louis C.K. practicing his hilarious special, and we had 8 people in the audience. And of those 8, one was Ben Affleck and one was Jennifer Garner. So it was Mike Kaplan hosting for Louis C.K. and 6 other people saying, "What's going on?"
Yeah. So they don't really announce that they're coming then?
No, well, Sandra Bullock did because she was coming from the movie set, so we had to save like 6 seats for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually it's such a small room that usually you just come in and it's very intimate. When we have TV, so like David Spade, when he was doing the Adam Sandler movie, he called and asked if he could do a few minutes on stage. So there's a lot of stuff like that that we're known across the country that people will want to stop in. Jim Norton usually comes in when he's in town.
Yep.
you know, who else? Gary Goldman, Colin Quinn. A lot of the guys I know from back in the day, Marin, CK will drop in if they're in the area.
So you really never know who you're going to see then when you go.
Right, yeah. Mike Birbiglia practiced a lot of sleepwalk with me here. We've known him from back in the day. Pete Holmes.
Wow.
So being here 20 years, we were like one of the first alternative clubs because you had the comedy club movement with the improvs and the funny bones. And as that started fading, you started getting the alternative clubs. And you had Largo and Luna in New York and L.A., and Eugene Merman really sort of gave us that imprint of being one of the first alternative clubs. So a lot of the comics who are big now know us from back then, being in the forefront.
Yep. So it's a place where comedians can try out new material?
Yeah, well, generally, it's funny how it works. Generally, if you're a new comedian, you want to do your best to impress the veterans. And if you're a veteran, you want to use it as a chance to show the new people that you still got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would if somebody wants to try stand-up comedy for the first time, can they try it at the?
I wouldn't recommend trying your first time at the studio, just because you've got a paid audience expecting a professional show, and you don't want to be standing there saying, "Wow, the lights are brighter than I thought."
Yeah.
But we have a whole process for anyone who wants to perform here. We have an information package, which is 4 or 5 pages that tries to describe what we look for, what the other clubs look for, all that sort of stuff. And if you get an idea of what we do fits you and what you do fits us, then I'll look at a demo tape as an audition. But what we really prefer is for someone to come here and watch a Wednesday or Sunday show, because that's the kind of show you'll be first doing, and catch a Friday or Saturday show, because that'll give you an idea of who we're moving up and what we're looking for. So if you get, you see a couple shows, you read over the information. If you feel comfortable that you know what you're getting into, we give you a shot.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, before I let you go, we have a part of the show called Questions from the Fans, and we ask our fans to send us some emails. And I'd like to read you.
That's great. You have fans.
Yes, yes, we do.
What's that like?
No, we don't have a ton of them, but we have a few of them.
I gotta get some.
Yeah. Okay. First email is from Ryan Jones. Ryan wants to know, who was the best person you have ever worked with, and who was the worst?
The best, Leno was really. I know he has a bad rap now, but I opened for him back when I was in Buffalo, and he took me to dinner, and then we hung out at the bar in the hotel afterwards, and he jumped up on stage at 2 in the morning while the band was taking a break and did 20 minutes when nobody knew who he was. He was really nice and outgoing and really supportive of a new young comic. And I got to but I got to meet Jimmy Fallon, because a lot of people we know are working on his show. Conan was nice. Really, it's really true. Kind of the bigger they are, the nicer they are.
Yeah.
The worst, I don't think there's any real worst. You have some people who get a little bit nervous before the show, so they're a little bit more persnickety. I'll tell you one. I was opening for a guy, just a comic from Los Angeles, and I went to the dressing room and said, "Hi, I'm Rick Jenkins, the local comedian. I'm going to be opening for you." And he was like, yeah, whatever, get out. And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess he's got an issue." And I go back to my dressing room, and he knocks on the door, and he says, "Hey, look, I'm really sorry. It's just, the Comedy Store has me going now on tour. I've never done this character for the whole show. Usually I just do impressions. But they think that this one character could be, I could do it from start to finish, and I've never done it before. I don't know if anyone's going to buy it for an hour. So I'm sorry I snapped at you, but I'm just, really nervous and kind of in my own head." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's no problem. I'll tell you what, I'll do an extra 5 minutes so that you don't have to go long." And he's like, "Oh, hey, that'd be cool. Thanks a lot." And that was the first time that Andrew Dice Clay ever played solely as Dice Clay.
Wow. Oh, I wasn't expecting you to say that name.
Well, that's why I was very lucky starting out in Buffalo at such a young age, because there weren't a whole lot of other comedians. So I got to work with a lot of big names, for a night coming up.
So was that in a small place in Buffalo?
Yeah, it was a little 400-seat jazz club, and they would do comedy once a week. So they'd have touring comedians coming in once a week.
And so I'm guessing the audience liked his character?
Yes, which really, really surprised me because, I mean, it's politically incorrect now.
Yeah.
But imagine doing AIDS jokes in 1984.
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, my God, this guy is great, but he's never going to make it. It's too dirty.
Yeah.
So I was wrong about that, too.
That's funny. Okay, one more email from Matt Scott. Matt wants to know, did you get into any trouble when you were younger? If so, what was the funniest thing you did?
The funniest, well, probably biggest trouble I got into is how I got to Boston in the first place. I was hanging out with some of the Buffalo comedians, and I was 120 pounds and 6 foot tall, and thought that six Jägermeisters and 6 Heinekens wouldn't affect me. So I stood up on top of the bar and told all the Buffalo comedians that they sucked and that I belonged in Boston because I was so much better than them. And I woke up in a train in South Station, Boston, in the toilet with a note pinned to my jacket that said, "Not so funny now." The comedians in Buffalo had actually taken a pool together, put me on a train at 3 in the morning, and I woke up in Boston. So that was a little bit of trouble.
That's funny. I think it's all. Yeah, I think it's all the questions I have.
Cool.
So yeah, where can people go to find out more about the Comedy Studio?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's our website, but yeah, it's just thecomedystudio.com. We do shows 6 days a week. We're starting to do some other shows in some other locations. But yeah, we always keep the tickets really reasonable, and we want to encourage comics to come by whenever they can.
Yep. Okay. Well, great. Thanks for talking to us today.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Great.
And hopefully we can talk to you again sometime.
Oh, that'd be great. Look forward to it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.